Alan Smith is the director of Saving Innocence in Los Angeles, California. They're a nonprofit who's devoted to fighting human trafficking. Over 300,000 children are affected by human trafficking in the United States. That's a conservative number. They don't know for sure. It's the fastest organized crime in the United States. Alan and his team do incredible, courageous work there, where they're guaranteeing if there's an incident, they'll get to it in 90 minutes in Los Angeles County. He wrote a book, Men Fight for Me. The perpetrators of this, the ones that are, you know, getting these young, mostly girls, to do these things are males. The Johns who are paying for the sex are men as well. And his thesis in his book is that we need to do better, men. We need to do better. The people that are doing this are in your neighborhood. They're the police. They could be the police. They could be a pastor. They could be a neighbor. They could be anybody. I'm not particular, pointing out or blaming anyone. It just can be anyone. But we need to do better ourselves. And if we know anybody who's, who kids around about it and maybe doing it, we need to be better at it. But it's a very interesting conversation, a great conversation with Alan and what he does with his team. You can donate to them. You can buy the book. You can find out more what's going on. But I really enjoyed this conversation and I learned a lot about it. And I know you will too. Thank you for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business? And it lasted over 25 years. Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Thank you so much for doing this, Alan Smith. What a great pleasure. So what? Let's just start right off. I mean, what don't we know about human trafficking?
Well, that's a great question. It depends on who you're asking that question to, obviously. But I think the big aha for most people that are walking around our country is they're thinking it's not in our country. They're thinking it's in
Mm.
Thailand or in Cambodia or some other place. They've heard of horror stories in other parts of the world. And what most people don't know is it's happening right here in our country in a big way. That's number one on the list, I think. And now, lately there's been more and more things like this, podcasts like yourself. Thank you for having me. And there's been some documentaries and Jeffrey Epstein Netflix debacle that happened. So more people are getting aware of it, but most people think it's farther away than it actually is.
Yeah, and some of the statistics that you cite in your book, I mean, 300,000 children in the US, 10,000 in Los Angeles, 90,000 in Texas.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the kind of crime that is in the shadows. Like, the authorities know exactly how many bank robberies there were this year. Like, there's a physical
Mm.
address, there's a bank, it got robbed, we have footage, it's reported. You know exactly how many banks were robbed. But you don't know exactly how many children, or adults for that matter, but children are being exploited and trafficked because it exists in the shadows. And so we do our best to count things and use projections. Honestly, the 300,000 number that is kind of kicked around as, conservatively, most people agree that it's at least 300,000. But honestly, I think it's a lot more than that. When you come down to it, if we could actually get the real number, it'd be a bigger number than even that, which is scary and tragic.
And you described that the average buyer is just a regular guy.
Yeah.
Let's expand on that, please.
That's the other aha, I think, excuse me, for the average person trying to understand what's happening here is they might think about a sex buyer, particularly one of children,
Right.
as the guy who's living in his van under the overpass of the freeway and, flunked out of school and is on drugs. And they just think of that kind of profile like, oh, yeah, well, that's the person. And what we've seen and observed and learned in this work, and as you read the book, the kind of the big subheading in that category, that chapter, on the buyers, is that most of them are just like what I would call the regular guy. It's the guy next door. It's
Right.
the little league coach. It's the dentist. It's the cop. It's the pastor. It's the friend. Probably most of your listeners know somebody who has bought sex. They just don't know it.
Mm.
And I think the other important message I'm trying to get out is that we have to enlarge the boundaries of what most people think is buying sex. And there's the graphic example of finding somebody on the street or making an appointment online and physically being with a person and having sex with them. Yes, that's buying sex. And most people dismiss it and say, well, I'm not doing that. Of course not. But what I would like to convey is that it's any sort of commercial sex um, action that you're somehow paying directly or indirectly for is a sex buyer. So going into a strip club
Hmm.
on a Friday night or any night with your friends, you're not having sex with the person on the stage, but you're paying money to see them perform. You're buying sex. The big one, the big aha that, I don't know what your
Hmm.
demographic is exactly, but predominantly consumed by men is pornography, although there's a growing percentage of women for sure. You're sitting in front of your computer, your smartphone, maybe after hours when your wife's in bed or something like that, and you may be at a free service. You may not be paying any money, but what men and women, but my niche here is to speak to men. What we don't understand is necessarily that your eyeballs and your clicks are being monetized by pornography sites. They're selling advertisement and whatnot. They are making money, even if you didn't pay any of your own personal money, on the exploitation and oftentimes actual trafficking of their actors in the porn video. That's commercial sex. You're buying sex if you're watching porn. So it's much bigger than just making an appointment online or picking up somebody on the street corner and physically having sex. It applies to much more of us than we would like to understand or maybe previously understood.
So let's talk about the actual process. We go back, and I want to talk about porn in a moment, but we talk about, you said the cop, your neighbor, the pastor. Like, what is the process in which they acquire these underage, mostly girls? Are they down and out? Are they citizens? Are they brought in from other countries? How is that process done typically?
You talk about the buyers or the victims?
Yeah. The victims themselves.
Okay. So the
How do the
victims,
buyers meet the victims?
yeah. Well, that's a great question. And that's kind of the equation that we have to understand. The victims are predominantly young girls, although definitely boys are being trafficked as well, but mostly little
Mhm.
girls. And the majority of these little girls that find themselves in this situation have already experienced some early childhood abuse, oftentimes sexual abuse,
Mm.
by somebody who was supposed to be taking care of them, violated them. If not their parent, a friend, family friend, an uncle coming over, touching them in ways they shouldn't be touched in these early formative years. And when I say early, I mean 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. They're being conditioned. Oh, I guess this is what love is. I guess this is how someone lets you
Mm.
know they love me because my uncle loves me and he's touching me in this way. So they don't know that that's a distorted, perverted kind of love. That's love. And
Mm.
so this child that's been neglected and abused in a number of different ways, oftentimes so poorly that the system steps in and puts them in the foster care system. So now this young girl and boys, but mostly girls, They've never seen a trusted, valued male before that treats them in the right and the correct and the appropriate way. They haven't seen it, hasn't been modeled for them. So they don't know the difference between them and someone who has bad intentions. So now the average age of entry is about 12. So the youngest kiddo that
Hmm.
we were taking care of at Saving Innocence, we got her at 7, 7, 8, 9, 10. But the average age of entry nationally is between 12 and 14. So that young 12, 13, 14-year-old wants everything that every 12 or 14-year-old wants. They want to be noticed and cared about and protected and loved, thought about, pursued, all the things that any of us at any age hope to have in our life. And now here comes this trafficker with bad intentions, starts masquerading himself as someone that cares about her. I'm your boyfriend. I love you. And for a little while, it's not. You can't tell the difference. It doesn't look like there's anything bad going on. She sure can't tell because she's never experienced the good side of a healthy relationship. And then once he grooms her is the word, into thinking that he's the only one that she can trust. Now they're in a deep bonded relationship, and then he springs it on her. I know a way that we can make some money, and we can do it pretty quickly. It won't be for very long. It's got to make some money so we can, go off and buy a house and run away together. That sounds great to her. She may or may not even object in that moment because this is her boyfriend. So the only one's ever cared about her.
Hmm.
So if she does object, she'll find out very, very quickly that their relationship is different than she thought. It's now one of force and coercion, the threat of force, actual force, even up to the point of lethal force. And
Hmm.
she has to do what she doesn't want to do, or maybe she does or she doesn't, but she has no choice. She realizes, I don't have a choice in this. And she gets put out either on, a lot of it's online these days with this technology that we have, a lot of times out on the streets, and she becomes for sale by this trafficker is putting her for sale. So that's that side of it. There she is. She's not sure how she got there. She doesn't know how to get out. No one's looking for her for that particular child. And now the other side of the coin is here's a broken, internally broken, dysfunctional, mostly male, and a lot of them are married. And this particular male has acquired some sort of a fantasy or some sort of a fetish of some kind, maybe online and pornography. He's seen things on pornography. Maybe he's brought it up to his wife, but maybe he hasn't because he knows she'd never go for it, or he was denied by her possibly to do whatever it is that he wanted to do the way he wanted to do it. And so now he becomes addicted in some way, at some level, to pornography or some other sexual fantasy. And now he goes looking in some way to satisfy his addiction. And because he's looking for it, it doesn't take long before you can find where these girls are for sale, and make the appointment online, or Friday night after a night with the guys, or you went to a professional sporting event, and wherever there's crowds of people, predominantly men, this can be found pretty easily. And now he's crossing over. He's probably already addicted to porn. He's probably already been to strip clubs. He's probably already done all those things. And now this is the next thing that he's pursuing, is to physically be in the presence of somebody that he can have power over in a sexual way. That was something that came out of my interviews in writing this book, over and over and over again. It's somebody he can have power over, and he can dominate, and he can
Hmm.
do whatever it is that he wants to do because he paid his money and he's entitled to it. This is how we think in Western culture. We pay our money and we get it the way we want it, when we want it, how we want it, whatever that
Hmm.
it is. And in this case, it could be a child, 12, 13, 14 years old. So that's kind of the shorter version, although not that short, of how they meet. It's a broken man looking to satisfy something that's so far unsatisfied, and it's a little girl who's been abused and neglected, and to the ultimate extreme example of being put for sale in a way where this broken man can purchase her. And it's tragic because it's happening way too much.
Yeah, and we've seen this depicted in movies and in literature, um, and is the so as far as the girl's side, as far as the victim side, at what point can we break the cycle, Alan? Do we know that so she's generally a victim of sexual abuse? She's generally put into some kind of system. We've seen all the movies where, people come to New York City and the predators are sitting there at the bus station waiting for these women to come off to see what, they could just tell them a mile away who's susceptible to this, and they're predatory, and they latch on, they start promising things as you depict. But as far as the girls at that young age, what can we do to break the cycle? You have a foster care program there, Saving Innocence. What can we do to help stop it at that level?
Yeah. And that's the right question. And that was the impetus for this book, Men Fight for Me, that I wrote, that you read, and we're talking
Right.
about, is
Yeah.
the antidote is to get enough men to stand up, to accept the responsibilities in front of them, including their own children, to enter this fight, to enter this battle. And there's kind of the macro picture and the micro picture. We need men to
Mm.
step up and embrace a healthy, positive, important, powerful role as a husband and a father. And if that were to happen, we would be producing less future traffickers and less future victims, because they're
Mm.
going to have now. There's a lot of great moms, a lot of great single moms who are doing the best they can. So I'm not saying do less of that, moms. What I'm saying is the missing ingredient is enough men to step in and partner and do what they need to do. So, I mean, I think there's things we can legislate. I'm all for increasing the penalties and the, the laws against traffickers and buyers. Go through the roof. That'll deter some, but it won't deter everybody for sure. Um, our society at large largely doesn't really value life, and we really largely don't value women. They're seen in song lyrics and movies and advertisements, oftentimes as disposable things to use and discard.
Mm.
Listen
Mm.
closely to the halftime show at the Super Bowl coming up. And a few of the guys, I'm not going to name their names here, have made millions and millions of dollars on lyrics that demean and degrade women and demean and degrade sex. And so this is what we're putting out there. This is what society is saying. This is okay. This is normal. We just hired him for the Super Bowl, the biggest musical gig in the country, maybe in the world, for that 20 minutes or whatever it is. So, what are our young boys supposed to be thinking? What are our young girls supposed to be thinking when all the messages around them are telling the young boys to own, control, and treat women like commodities? And it's telling all the young girls, this is the best you can ever hope for. In fact, this is what you're created for. This is why you're here, to satisfy violent men. That's what the media messaging and what the song lyrics are saying. And we need men to step up and lead in their family and in their neighborhood and their community and say, no, no, that's not how it is. That's not how it's supposed to be. Not on my watch. And if we get enough men rallying together, we can make not only a dent, but we can see this go away, which is the ultimate goal, to see child trafficking, which grows into adult trafficking, eliminated. There's
Mm.
no place in a civilized society for it.
And your thesis in your book is just that. You want men to solve this problem. You want men to, not only be a good practitioner themselves and be a good father, husband, etc., but to call out their friends who might be doing it as well. I mean, that's very tough to do. We all have friends that are obese, for example. And, you know, I remember I was really obese at one point and I was able to defeat it. But I often think to my, and I elbow my friends and say, why didn't you tell me I was fat? Why didn't you tell me? And of course, tongue in cheek. But, you know, your thesis is men, you're the one who's got to stop this. You're the real perpetrator of this. You've not only got to do it, but you've got to tell your friends that are doing it as well and gather them together and act accordingly.
No, that's absolutely right. And I go into some detail in the book, kind of my journey when I went to Saving Innocence 6 years ago. I understood something really quickly,
Yeah.
not only in my own staff meeting for Saving Innocence, but when I go to a larger community event on trafficking or some kind of a training event, there's almost no men there, almost all women.
Hmm.
And then when we started learning about, the crime that we're talking about, it's almost all men that are the buyers, the perpetrators, and it's almost all men that are the traffickers, the sellers. So
Wow.
that was really troubling for me because I'm a man. And it's like I became kind of embarrassed and ashamed to be a man if this is how we are going to be treating the most vulnerable in our society. Like this is tragic. This is terrible. And then, the book I needed, or the book Men Fight for Me, the title came from in chapter 3. Rachel tells her story, and she's not from an early childhood abuse. She came from a great family, wasn't in the foster program. She went away to college, had a great GPA, star in sports, and she got lured in by a false, fraudulent modeling agent, and she signed a contract to, be a model. And he said, okay, here's your first job, go have sex with the guy in the car. What are you talking about? Oh, here's your parents' address you gave me. I'm going to kill your parents if you don't do it. And I'm going to kill your roommate because I know where you're going to college. So it's like, whoa. And she said, in the middle of all that, at some point I lost will. I could no longer fight for myself. I needed someone to fight for me. And that lit a fire in me.
Right.
And my particular niche, because I'm a man, is to speak to the biggest part of the problem, men. And I realized this over the last year. I went to the doctor, went to the dermatologist, and there's a little spot on my forehead. He said, let me take a look at that. I don't know if I like that. So he took a little chunk out of it, did a biopsy. He said, yeah, sure enough, it's skin cancer. Come on in. We're going to dig it out and stitch it back up. Okay, great. So I did that. He took it out, and it taught me in real life a really important, valuable lesson in life, whether it's something related to medical or something in your house is broken, whatever. If you can determine and isolate and define a particular problem, now you have the capability of coming up with an appropriate and effective remedy. He knew it was skin cancer. He took it out. It's gone. If he thought it was something else, he would have had a different treatment and it wouldn't have been good. Well, in this case, there's no question. It's indisputable. The biggest part of the problem is men. And that's great news. We're 50% there. That means the biggest part of the solution is going to be men. There's no mystery here. I don't want one awesome, brave, courageous, phenomenal woman to step away from the fight. They have an important battle in this fight as well. But the missing ingredient is men. So men, I'm calling you. Man, if you're listening to this podcast, it's time to get off the couch, get off the sidelines, get into this fight. We need you. And there's children out there that have given up the will to fight, and they're saying, I need someone to fight for me. It's like, who's with me? Let's go. We got to do this.
Well said, Alan. So, if you had your way, would you shut down every strip club?
If I had my way, would I shut down every strip club? Yes, I would. Yeah. Here's the thing. There's a thin line between consensual sex and consensual exploitation and non-consensual. The problem is you don't know from the naked eye what is consensual and what is non-consensual. Then that's a problem with pornography. So many of the actors, quote unquote, that are on screen are not there consensually. They don't want to be there. They've been forced, they've been coerced, they've actually been trafficked in there. Someone videotaped them having sex, getting raped, and now that's quote pornography. But you don't know that from looking at it. So you got to shut down the whole industry because there's far too many that are being exploited, trafficked, and abused in that way. I don't know if my expertise is in the strip club, but what I can tell is it's absolutely exploitation of women. It's complete. It's mostly women. There's men too, of course. It's feeding the exploitive soil that trafficking is growing out of, and other forms of sexual abuse. Of course, there's somebody somewhere that's in a strip club that's in their mind not being forced to be there. I would probably want to look a little deeper at what their childhood was like and what their early adolescence was like. And maybe they don't see any other options. There's actually a study that 89% of the women in the sex industry want to get out, want to be doing something else, but they don't see any other options. For whatever it is, their upbringing, their environment, they don't see any other option, but they don't want to be doing it. So they have to do it in their mind. So it's probably a more complicated answer than not. The short answer, yeah, I'd shut it down because it's exploiting women and men. It's exploitation. And it's communicating that this is okay to have a barely dressed or non-dressed woman on a stage and you're paying money to see that. There's no part of that that's healthy and appropriate.
But we know the reason why a lot of women do it. It's economic. Brent Dowling, who we both know, you were on his podcast, and he cited a particular, woman who was doing that just for economics. She couldn't work, she couldn't watch her
Mm-hmm.
kid, and raise enough money in a short amount of time. She didn't feel that she was being exploited. But you just don't think that. I mean, I'm not a frequenter of strip clubs, but you just feel there's no good from it at all. There's no positivity from there.
I mean, there's on the ground level, there's a 30,000 foot level, there's all those different things.
Mm.
Um, for a woman who's caught in it right now, who's quote unquote doing it for their own, just to make money, I would want to wrap around her some job training, some skills, some counseling.
Mm.
get her to a place where she could see other options and other opportunities, and then actually provide other jobs trainings, resume writing, like help her get out. And there's a number of organizations here in LA. There's a great one called Treasures that they do exactly that. They come around these women in a non-shaming, blaming kind of a way, and offer them the support and help to get out because they know they don't want to be there.
Oh, wow.
Um, so yeah, it's not a you're bad, don't do that. It's no, let us help you. Um, I haven't been in a strip club. I certainly wasn't one that was exploited that way. I just know from the people with the lived experience that I know really well, and they would say that it's terribly abusive and dangerous and exploitive, and there isn't anything good long term, big picture. In that moment, maybe this girl makes some money to buy some food that day, so let's help replace that
Mm.
and give her a way that she can feel good about. Well, we teach her something else.
I'm no way defending, by the way. I just
Yeah,
want to hear the other perspective, and I guess it's the same thing with the porn industry. Is there such good as good porn? Is there such thing as healthy pornography in
yeah.
your eyes?
I've heard this term recently a couple different places called ethical porn. I guess that's a
Mm.
genre. It's a niche called ethical porn. And I'm assuming, I don't really know what it is, but I'm assuming just from the term ethical porn that they somehow vetted, and the people that are doing it truly want to do it, and they're purely consensual.
Mm.
And this is what I'm choosing to do to make money. And they're going to pay me to do it. And they're going to have HIV testing. And I mean, all the stuff. They checked all the boxes. Um, is there any good version of porn? I'd say absolutely not. Because once
Mm.
again, it's exploiting another human for money. And at the end of the day, human life has value. We're not meant to be bought and sold like a commodity and turn off and turn on the channel. That isn't, I just believe there's something more important that we are meant to do than sell ourselves in that way. And now I know there's a percentage of people that would want to shout me down right now, but so just for the sake of the argument, let's say there is a small percentage of people that are truly doing it and that's really what they want to do and they don't feel forced and it's what they love to do. Okay, so let's put that over to the side for a moment. We can come back there if you want. But the vast majority of what we would call mainstream pornography, nearly all of them, most of them, there's a documentary coming out and they're negotiating their streaming services and how they're going to sell it. So, but it's called Beyond Fantasy. You can't see it yet. A friend of mine spent about 5 years interviewing everybody: buyers, directors, producers, victims, actors, everybody in the porn industry, all the way to the very top of the notorious people that have done porn for many, many years. And his word to me was chilling. He says, not some, not many, but
Mm.
most of the actors in porn are there against their will. They're being forced. We've had trafficking victims be forced to be in a motel room or on a stage somewhere, get raped by a bunch of men, and someone filmed it and put it up on porn. And we kind of talked about this earlier in the podcast.
Mm.
There's no way of knowing sitting on your couch in the middle of the night if that's who you're watching or not. So because the margin of error is so great,
Mm.
yes, it's a form of exploitation on any circumstances, even if you're exploiting yourself. Um, but the vast majority is not that. The vast majority is people being trafficked. They're trafficking victims um, into the porn industry, and we have to step up and say, no, there's better. There's a better life for you. We're not going to let that happen anymore.
Now, what if the porn actors are gluten free and free range? No, that's just a joke. Um, so, if now, what if we just talk about mainstream? You happen to be in the movie room there. There's movie posters behind you. There are some movies that have sex scenes in it. I mean, certainly those are paid actors, and
Yeah.
but there some may argue that there's some element of exploitation there in some of those movies. To that,
Yeah.
you say?
Oh, maybe. I mean, depending on the story that's being told and how it's being told, there's kind of the intent, then there's the execution of it all. Certainly,
Mm.
the basic media, Hollywood, uh, you know, music industry is not. It's not decreasing the exploitive culture we're living in. It's increasing it. Not that every movie that
Mm.
references some intimacy is done poorly and done inappropriately. Sometimes it might actually be necessary to tell the story for whatever reason. And as paid adult actors, that's probably not a problem. But again, you can usually know it when you see it. And that
Mm.
gratuitous sex scene in a movie that is like just simply there to show two people having sex in a graphic way. It's like, okay, does that necessary for the story we're trying to tell, or are you just it's going to put butts in seats? It's going to put people interested because we're
Right.
addicted. We're addicted to you know sexual circumstances. So I guess on a case by case basis, but certainly when you go over the edge into something that's just inappropriate, I'd say we got to be real careful with that.
Certainly. So getting back to the human trafficking, and these are kind of elements to that, the porn industry and strip clubs. I mean, I've heard in other countries how there's children being taken from foster homes and sold into sex slavery, and completely against their will. I don't know how true that is, but is that kind of thing happening here, or is it more as you describe, is that they're kind of being lured in by these by these monsters? Let's just call them that.
There's almost no scenario that you could bring me that I would say that isn't happening here.
I
I
see.
wouldn't rule out anything that you might tell me you heard about or something like that. But I will say the
Mm.
majority is what's called the Romeo Pimp, or the boyfriend, who masquerading into this young girl who's got vulnerabilities. He can spot them a mile away. She's at the bus stop. She's at the mall. She's leaving school, and he can tell if she is needy and wanting relationships. A lot of this is online. A lot of people, the great
Mm.
internet. I mean, there's so many great parts of the internet. We're using it right now for something hopefully productive. But in the same 2 seconds
Mm.
that took us to sign on to this, I can sign on to all kinds of dangerous places. And there's predators out there masquerading as somebody else. So the majority of these victims, certainly that we see, um, they're already in the foster care system. They already have vulnerabilities and needs, and somebody sees that and they prey upon that. Now we have had out and out kidnappings. The van drives up and the guys grab and throw a girl in the van. That has happened to girls that we've worked with and that we know of. Um, there is examples more than you'd like to think of parents here in this country selling their own child, trafficking their own child.
Uh,
So that happens, if you can imagine that. So all of those other scenarios, I've got a friend who does some undercover covert work around the world, but really around this country, and he's told me stories in other places of there's like auctions, like there are like things you've seen in the movies, like auctioning off children to be sex slaves. Like that kind of stuff is happening, but the majority is that kid who's lonely, maybe unsupervised by their parents. Maybe dad's gone out of the picture. Maybe mom is addicted to something and not paying attention. And this kiddo is online or maybe out in school and gets approached by somebody promising them the world. And it's going to be you and me. I'm going to take care of you. She's never had anybody take care of her before. What do you need? Oh man, let's go get a new pair of earrings. This is beautiful. Like it's that scenario that is most of the victims that we see.
just being coerced by predators. My goodness, you talk a lot about the actual language that's used and bad terms like
Yeah,
underage prostitution.
yeah, right.
We just need to get away from that.
Yeah, no, that's been a lot of our work at Saving Innocence, and in this space is as knowledge and understanding of what's happening is increasing and getting more accurate. Some of the language is proven to be outdated, and so I do have a little
Mm.
section in the book. I appreciate you reading that book. You're coming up with all these things right from the book. Thank you. But there is a section on
Thank
language
you
and
for
language.
writing it.
What's that?
Thank you for writing it.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you. You're welcome. But yeah, there's some outdated language. Like you've heard the term child prostitute, and probably, and that was a common word. Oh, a child prostitute. And a lot of times, at least my
Right.
recollection, it's in terms of like in other parts of the country. And we actually had a big campaign in Los Angeles about 5 years ago called "No Such Thing," and there's no such thing as a child prostitute. Like it's impossible. The two words don't work together. The term prostitute, it's a legal term. Prostitution is a legal term. It's still on the books. inside the work, we really don't even use that word very often, except for if
Mm,
required because we're talking to a law enforcement officer and we're referencing something like that. But absolutely, a child prostitute, impossible. Prostitution suggests choice, suggests kind of a career move. It suggests
mm,
something like that. I need to make money. Well, the federal age of consent is 18 years old, and you can't consent. A child can't consent to a felony being perpetrated against them. I can't tell you it's okay for you to
mm,
rape me because I'm 14 years
mm.
old. I'm not allowed to do that. The law doesn't provide for that. So a child prostitute? Nope. There's child abuse victims. There's rape victims. There's all those kinds of things, but not a child. That's one of the things. Child prostitute. My little pet peeve. It's almost kind of humorous. Almost in this space, they refer to the buyers as a John. You've heard that word before.
Right.
Oh yeah, we arrested 27 Johns. Okay, well let's at least call them sex buyers. Like they're so pathetic and broken, they actually have to pay someone to have intimacy with them. Sex buyers. They're rapists. The women don't want to be there. We know that the women don't want to be there, and for sure the children aren't allowed to be there. So you're a child rapist. You're a sex buyer. You're not a John. I've got good friends named John. A
Right.
girlfriend may send a Dear John letter to the breaking up with the boyfriend.
That's right.
Like
That's
what
right.
in the world are we calling these guys Johns for? It's like historically it's reaching back into history that wants to minimize this. Hey, boys will be boys. Let's call them Johns. Keep them anonymous. It really wasn't until not that long ago before the light is being shown on this issue for what it really is. No, they're not Johns. They're sex buyers. They're rapists. That's what they are. Let's call them what they are. And for the longest time, even as children, as society, we prefer. Well, they want to be doing it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That girl.
Mm,
Yeah. No, she's a whatever. And fill in the blank, a derogatory term. No, it's not her choice. She doesn't want to be there, and she shouldn't be allowed to be there. So we're not going to use language that sort of conflates the idea and endorses the idea of choice and prerogative. Nope, that's not happening. That's just not the reality.
yeah. Wonderful point. As we talk and as I read, I just wonder maybe it's just short for John Doe and they don't want to give their name. But when there's suspects for murder or for arson, we don't say we have 10 Johns. We say we have 10 suspects or we've captured 10, you
Yeah.
know, uh perpetrators. We never say like they're these
Right.
nameless people. And why do we
Right.
do this for this industry?
Right.
Terrible.
That's right. And I think it hints at some of the bigger problem is that there's rich and powerful people
Mm,
all the way to the top that are involved. There's
right. We
there's
want to protect their names.
there's police officers, there's mayors and
Mm,
governors, there's presidents, and right now the big
pastors.
case that was just happening with the Jeffrey Epstein and his girlfriend that just got
Right.
convicted. I mean, there's pictures of members of the royal family that are there, and former presidents of the United States were on his island, and yeah, it goes all the way to the top.
Yos.
And
Yes.
so, of course, it makes sense when you think about that. That's why it's been so hard. It's been the fastest growing crime in the world. And part of that
Yeah.
is the people that we need the help to crack down on it are involved. And there's billions of dollars changing hands, billions of dollars. And so when billions of dollars are changing hands and rich and powerful people are involved in it, it's not going to be easy to shut down. It's not we're not the crime we're talking about isn't somebody putting graffiti on the freeway. It's not some
Right.
knucklehead selling knockoff Disney shirts out front of Disneyland or something like that. We're talking about child abuse at an unprecedented level.
Mm.
In this last year and even in this last few weeks at Saving Innocence, we work mostly with minors. We've had about a dozen of our kids lose their life, been murdered. One of our 16-year-olds got murdered and thrown on the side of the freeway 2 weeks ago here in Los Angeles. It's been all over the LA news. I don't know if it made the national news or not. A couple of our kids got ambushed and shot and murdered at a birthday party. Uh, about a month ago, police found one of our kids dead at a bus stop in Hollywood. And the way that she was found, I won't go into details, but the way that she was found confirmed that she experienced severe sexual abuse right up to the very end. So this is over the top. It's not even just, well, let the people have sex and they want to pay money. No, people are losing their lives.
Right.
We had a kid get burned alive on broad daylight because she broke a rule from her trafficker. These are ruthless, vicious people who view their victims as subhuman. They're not humans. They're treating it. It's purely a financial transaction. It's motivated by finances. How many times can I make you be raped in a given day? And a lot of times it's 8, 10, 12, 15, or 20 times in a day, because that's how I'm going to make my money. And I'm going to make it until you're no good to me anymore, and then you're going to be gone. So it sounds dramatic, but I'm just trying to share with you the reality why this is so urgent, that we as men step up, do something, get yourself a little more educated. Find a local anti-trafficking organization. Go to savinginnocence.org. Learn about what we're doing. Go to fightforme.net. That's where the book is available. And there's other video blogs and things that are there to continue to learn about what's going on. And not a shameless plug, because the proceeds are going to victims of sex trafficking. But I want everyone to buy this book and buy a few of them and give them to all the men in your life.
Right.
I don't know if you would agree because you read the book, but I'm just telling you this. There's some stuff in
Absolutely.
here that's educational and that needs to be said and needs to be consumed, because this can't go on another day, not a day more.
And we have angels like you, Alan, that we need to thank, and to have organizations that you have. And, not only, do you have this wonderful organization, have great people working for you, great bios on them, on YouTube and on your different social platforms, and great interviews with them. But you also give solutions. Off too many we see these, you know, nonprofits that they want donations, but now you're saying, we may not be able to stop those pimps, or whatever you want to call those monsters, those deviants who take advantage of the girls, but we all probably know somebody who's doing this, who's buying it, and we can stop them. We can try to get them help. We can be better men, because we are doing it. Men are doing it, and we need to stop it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And in the book, there is a lot of solutions. I mean, when you look at the thickness of the book, which is not that thick, I kept it pretty brief because I know most
Right.
guys don't like to read that much.
Mm.
So it's a fairly brief book, and probably the last 20% of it or so is the appendix. And it's a lot of resources, and whether it has to deal with pornography addiction, or whether, like, what can I do? Well, here's 12 things you can do today. And there's a bunch of resources in there. In addition to chapter 8 in the book, it's called Looking in the Mirror. And I'm challenging men to look in the mirror and start with themselves. And there's a whole list of things, kind of macro. Here's what you can do in the big picture. Then the micro, here's what you can do. Smaller picture, do this. And there's the ultimate solution for sex trafficking. I went so bold and said, I know the ultimate solution. And so get the book at fightforme.net and discover what the ultimate solution is. Spoiler alert, it has to do with you, man, you men that are listening right now. It has to do with you. You're a big part in the ultimate solution. And I hope that you'll all get this book and dive into it, because it's the scourge of our society right now. And we need to keep throwing light on it and kicking the dust off of it, so that enough men can rise up to the challenge. I think most men are good men, and most men want a good fight. They're in for a fight. Well, this is the fight. I got one for you. Let's get on board and enter the fight.
Yeah, good for you. So, on the podcast, we talk, the overall theme is discipline. I lost a lot of weight. People ask me how, like they want some magic answer. I just say discipline. I focused, I got there. Do you consider yourself disciplined? And I believe this is the way that we should encourage other men to be so.
That's a great question. Wow, that's a deep question. I'd like to say that I'm fairly disciplined. I guess there are people I see online and others that are like, wow, they're awesome. I would say I'd like to maybe I'd phrase a little bit more. I'm more focused. Maybe that's the same word. Maybe they're synonymous. But at this
Mm.
sort of season of my life, I'm focused on two things. And it's what guides me to answer questions of, do I speak at this podcast? Do I go on this trip? Do I go to this event? What is it that I'm doing? And if it has to do with child protection and challenging men, that's my rubric. That's how I'm going to decide where I'm going to go and how I'm going to spend my time and my energy. That's very focused for me. And so I may have a political thought or two, but I'm not going to make a lot of comments on that. That's not my lane. That's not my thing. I may have thoughts on sports, and I'm a sports fan, but I'm not, ranting and raving about whatever the sports thing is. Although I'm interested, I like sports. The main guiding principle is child protection and challenging men, and I'm disciplined with that range. And I'd say that I'm disciplined on the things that matter. And I'd like to lose a couple pounds, so maybe I can learn from you. But but is there a second part to that question? I'm sorry, I lost my track.
How can we use discipline to get these other men in line, the ones that may be perpetrating some of these things? I think it's an avenue to get there.
Yeah,
How
that's
are we going to do that? I mean, that's what you outline in your book.
yeah, and that's where that chapter 8 called "Looking in the Mirror." First, we have to get our own personal life in line with what we would like to see
Mm.
happening out in society and culture. We can't be doing things in the dark that we don't want to see happening in the light. We got to get our personal life and our heart and our actions in that space. And then, as I talk about in the book, start loving your wife appropriately. Your sons and your daughters desperately need to see a strong, healthy, positive version of masculinity. You're their greatest teacher. You be that for them. Your daughters need to see that. So they need to know how they can choose a boyfriend and an eventual husband. Your sons need to see that so they can understand how they're supposed to treat girls at the elementary school playground and junior high and high school. And then go find two or three buddies of yours that have kids of similar age, and start joining together. Meet once a month, fathers and sons, fathers and daughters, and go through the book. I mean, age appropriately, of course, but start building in these characteristics that will support the positive kind of society that we want to see. And again, there's a lot of examples in the book. Now you got two or three men and families in your community. Now get a few more. Keep raising your eyes over the horizon, and challenge men. I talk about, when I talk about the definition of a man, and I talk about one of the pillars is that he leads courageously. An authentic, true male is one that leads courageously. Well, it's going to take courage to lead in this space, because you have friends right now that are addicted to pornography. You have friends right now that think it's no big deal to talk about and joke about women in a demeaning, degrading way. Well, how are we going to get your best friend, to change his language and his behavior a little bit? It's only going to come from you. If you're his best friend or a close friend, that's going to take courage. So I think the very first step is for all of us as men to really take a moment, take a breath, and say, what kind of a world am I contributing to that my son and my daughter are growing up in? First pillar of an authentic man is accepts responsibility, rise to the challenge, jump on a grenade. The grenade might be your friend group. They might not like it when you start challenging them in this way. But if not you, then who? The old saying, if not now, then when? I don't know how to teach that other than model it. And if we can get a few models to model it and show everyone else, here's how you do it. And we're here to help. We're here to help in any way. And I think this book is a great first step to be inspired and see some of the things maybe you hadn't seen before.
Absolutely. Yeah. You talk about the authentic masculinity, and you have kind of four pillars. One that you mentioned is lead courageously, accepts responsibility is the first. Very important.
Yeah. Yeah. The third one is lives a life of service. He's serving his family, he's serving his wife, he's serving his kids, his community, his family, the world. And then the fourth pillar is that he understands that who he is, meaning his internal, is more important than what he does, his external.
Mm.
So you can choose whatever job you want. You could be a rich and famous athlete or entertainer, or you could work at the corner store. All that is fine. Whatever that is, it is. But what's most important is the way you conduct your life with integrity and honesty and those things. So if we can get enough men, think about this, get enough men, a lot of men, generations of men, of accepting all the responsibilities in front of them, not shirking. They're not running from them. They're embracing them, and maybe a few more
Mm.
that aren't actually theirs. We get them leading courageously. leading their family and their friends courageously, stepping into the world courageously. Rather than running from a battle and an important fight, you lean into it. And then you live a life of service. You give your life away. You serve those around you. Like, that's a world I want to live in. That's a world worth living in. And that's the tipping point. If we can get enough men doing that one community at a time, now we got something that we'd be proud of.
Well said, Alan. I was raised mostly by my mother. I have two daughters, so I have a very kind of feminine, perspective, and that's why it really hits home. And um, your four pillars there of being authentic masculinity really drives that point home, and I applaud you for that. Alan Smith, what motivates you?
What motivates me? I've been with Saving Innocence about 6 years now, a little over 6 years. So I had a whole sort of life and different career path going on, and I stepped away from what I was doing. And what motivated me is I'm a dad with a daughter, and I have a son too. But as a dad with a daughter, I'd heard about this, whatever this all this was. I'd heard about Saving Innocence, and I cold called them. And I drove over and I met with the founder for 2 hours on a 1 hour parking meter. So yes, I got a ticket, and I was entranced. We were having this conversation. Wait a minute, what? Tell me more. How does that? Why that? And I just drove away shell shocked. And it's sort of like everything I had done, people I knew, experience I've had began to make sense. This is why I'm supposed to fight this fight. And then when my friend Rachel, I mentioned earlier in chapter 3 of the book, said, I needed someone to fight for me, that told me there's a countless number of victims out there that have given up. They've waved the white flag and they need someone to fight for them. Well, I'll fight for you. I'm a fighter by nature. I mean, I didn't get in a lot of fights growing up or anything like that, but I'm a fighter mentality. As you mentioned, I don't know if there's a video feed on your podcast, but Braveheart and Rocky are right behind me, posters. And I like a good fight, figuratively and literally, I suppose, in this space. So all that motivates me. And then you get to a certain age and you start thinking about, what am I leaving behind? I'd like to think I have a lot more years here on this earth, but you start thinking, what am I going to leave behind? And I like to leave behind a legacy of a healthy, growing, stronger, everyday community and world where men are treating women with respect, valuing them, they're honoring them, they're serving them. And as much as my voice can impact all that, all of those things are what motivate me. And really, the biggest motivator is that now in this work, I've gotten to know a number of these younger survivors. I know them personally; they're friends of mine. A number of them in the book. I co-authored it with a friend of mine named Jessica. You can read all about her in the book. She tells her story courageously.
Yes.
They motivate me um, because they need strong people, but in my niche, my lane, strong men to not only fight for them, but fight for all those that are like them or were like them. So in there is a few big things that motivate me. I know too much. I can't walk away. I may not be with Saving Innocence the rest of my life, but I can't walk away from this fight because there's a bunch of victims out there being exploited and trafficked and saying, I need someone to fight for me. Will you fight for me? Yes, I will. I can't say no to that.
Yeah, so will I, Alan. And how do you measure success?
Such deep questions. Well, there's a lot of ways to look at that and unpack that. There's numerical success, which doesn't always tell the whole story, but in
Mm,
terms of what we do with Saving Innocence, are we growing and the things you can measure? Number of staff doing the work, number of dollars raised to do the work, number of kids that we're in the process of recovering and growing. So that's one way to look at success. Um,
right.
I like to think of success at an individual basis is that you're doing the very best that you can do with what you have to work with. So am I using my voice? You invited me to come on to your podcast. I didn't say no. I said yes. Am I showing up with the best that I have so that I can be useful in a productive, healthy way? I think that's what one measure of success. I can't slam dunk a
Mm,
basketball. I can't go catch a touchdown pass in Super Bowl. So it's not failure if I don't do those things because I can't do those things.
right.
But the things that I can do, am I doing them or am I shying away from that? I think that's another way to think about success.
That's a wonderful answer, Alan. And to see some of the success stories and some of the videos on the site are so heartwarming. You see these young women who are now have got housing and that are productive parts of society from such a traumatic background is success, Alan. It's success for you. It's success for your firm, and it's success for our society. I want to
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Thank you. I'd like to think so, and I hope so. And we'll let other people determine that, and you know, interpret it how they will. I just know that I don't have any choice. I got to get up every day and fight for these. In my case, these kids that are losing hope and or have lost hope. That's what I need to be doing for me.
Alan, thank you so much for your time today. Please tell us how we can help. We can actually donate directly.
Yeah.
We can buy the book. There's so many ways. I'll put everything in the show notes, but please tell us how we
Yeah.
can contact you and your organization.
Yeah. No, thank you. Go to savinginnocence.org. And there's 5 or 6 videos posted throughout the website. Watch them all. Watch every one of them. There's survivors telling their stories. There's our virtual gala, that we had this last fall. And there's other things. Become a little bit more educated. Go to savinginnocence.org. This is not a fundraising scenario, but if you're there and you want to donate, I just want to help. Sure, here I have an extra $100 or $50 or $10 or 1,000, whatever. Go to savinginnocence.org. There's a donate tab. We'd love to, have you as a financial partner. Um, you can also sign up. Well, you have to. You won't be. You won't have a choice. I mean, you don't have to sign it up, but there'll be a little when you sign onto the website. There'll be a little opportunity to become get on our mailing list. We send out monthly newsletters. You can learn more about what's happening. So go to savings.org. The other way is go to fightforme.net. That's a little website we created around the book. It's for sale on Amazon, so you just go straight to Amazon, look for Men Fight For Me. But we do have a button. We're sending people to fightforme.net because there's a YouTube channel connected there. We're filling it with interviews with survivors and other people that are part of this. There's going to be more coming. We're going to keep adding content there. There's biographies of the various people that are in the book and contributors and links to their important websites and tools that we're promoting. So I'd go to those. I'd start with those 2 websites, poke around, sign up, get on both mailing lists, and of course, get the book for you and all the men that are in your life. And then you can contact me through our website, through fightforme.net. I got an email today, somebody asking me a question, and I'd love to have a dialogue with you and help you with your way. We had some men from the East Coast of Virginia, I think, who read the book, and they have a men's group every Thursday morning or whatever it is. And next week, I'm gonna be via Zoom. I'm gonna speak to their men. They all read the book. They want to talk to me about it. So I'm just open and available to anything that I can attribute to challenging men and protecting children. And all of this work falls under that bandwidth. So we'd love to help.
Alan Smith, you're an inspiration, and I applaud you. And I am now part of your tribe, and I invite others to do the same. Finding out the numbers, finding these stories was shocking, and let's all pledge to help this and find success in it. Thank you so much, Alan, for your time today. I really really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And one big step in ending this atrocity is more people like you shining their light from their platform on all of this. So I greatly appreciate you doing this. And thanks again. I'll come back anytime you invite me.
Sounds good. My daughter goes to Cal State, so if I'm ever in the area, perhaps we'll have a cup of coffee.
Oh, that'd be great. Look me up. That'd be great.
Very good. You be well. Thanks again. I'll talk to you very soon.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with 1 or 2 of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Disciplined Conversations.